church and state. Well, there should be separation of education and state.
Oh, I'm 100% with you.
But if you're 100% for it, and you talk to people about vouchers as a libertarian candidate, you give a mixed message.
Do you see vouchers as less evil or more evil than what we have now?
Very difficult to say. Very unclear. On one hand, there's certain efficiencies. On the other hand, you don't want efficiencies. On the other hand, you ruin private education. It's very, very unclear. And Milton Friedman, his whole career is based on these creative quasi-public sector, private sector cooperation. There's a name for that. It's called fascism.
Yeah.
That's the public-private. So if that's the clarion call for libertarianism,
we're in trouble.
So I guess that then we're supposed to suggest to the electorate, we get the government out of education altogether. You quit paying school taxes and you keep your money and you send your children to the school of your choice.
Sure.
Oh yeah, everyone's going to go for that one. I can see that.
Okay, we've got John, and then Phil, and then Miroslav.
Okay, I feel a little bit guilty. I'm almost going to hijack the direction of the discussion. There's some really good pragmatic discussions here. I'm going back to the inevitability of government. The suggestion is that government's not inevitable because there's no movement towards world government. I would suggest the rise of the nation state in the 19th and 20th century. Items like the League of Nations, followed by the United Nations, the growth of the European Union, Mercosur, a whole pile of other organizations. There probably is some trend in that direction. So that's my minor point, and I don't even really want to debate because who knows where the future's going. My main point is that government has been basically an inevitable facet of human development as long as there's been recorded history. Only extremely unusual situations, very, very short periods of time where anarchy has existed, extremely unusual. So I think there must be something good about government, or that would not have been such a universal feature of human existence.
Wait a minute.
Who's first?
Jan wants to start here.
Does it follow from the fact that something has happened all over the place that is good?
Starvation must be great.
For example,
people don't choose to starve.
Well, take death and cancer, for example.
But people don't choose to die. They don't choose to get cancer.
They choose to
People
rape.
choose government.
They choose to rape.
No, they
the
don't.
mother.
Well, but they don't choose government. What they do is they choose not to fight when somebody tries to inflict the government on them, because they're wimps. I mean, they prefer life as slaves to death. Most people do. So they do. It doesn't follow that there's something good about government. It just follows that,
But then
that
why
government is playing a game of chicken.
But okay, the anarchy has been tried lots of times. It's always failed.
Well,
Usually
A, that's
most
not
once.
true. That's not true. Anarchy has hardly ever been tried. And B, if Somalia is as Van Noten described it, it has been around a long, long time. And also, by the way, anthropologists now, generally speaking, believe that primitive tribes are always anarchic. Government doesn't come in until a tribe gets to be fairly large. Tribes have been living, for hundreds, thousands of years without government, but they have to be very small.
Yeah, right. Well, again, as I said, there's isolated situations.
But the fact that when they get larger, they turn into government doesn't imply that government is something good and that people have chosen it.
But that doesn't, like, Darwinism indicate that governments are such a bad idea it would die out?
Well, Darwinism explains why the lions have survived at the expense of, their prey. Well, there's a symbolism.
Yeah.
Actually, it's even better.
Yeah.
Lions survive along with their prey because the lions carefully eat only a certain amount of them. It doesn't follow that the gazelles like being eaten by lions and think that they're a good thing.
One important development in the last 30 years or so in economic analysis was, and in evolutionary biology actually also, was the use of game theory to model the interaction of individuals. And I think we've learned a lot from game theory about how individuals behave in order to survive, which all individuals want to do, as Thomas Hobbes had told us. How individuals behave when they want to survive and when they are in situation of conflicts with other people. Again, I'm going to refer you to this book by Robert Sugden, Rights, Cooperation, and Welfare. It's a bit technical, but if you're interested in these issues of evolutionary biology and using game theory to model human behavior and human conflict, I think you'll be interested in the book. And it might, it is clear that when there is a conflict between two individuals, either they fight it out with a high risk of actually both of them being injured and dying, or one submit and the other one play hawk. And it is not impossible that some individuals are actually hardwired to play dove more than to play hawk, and that others are more hardwired to play dove. Individual preferences might differ there for important biological reasons, which is that individuals had to live together and not fight all the time. And if that is the case, not only could it reinforce the idea that government is unavoidable, not only because we've seen it historically, but that as long as individuals have the genes they have, a large proportion of them will want government. But it also teaches something on many things, on how to persuade people that individual liberty is still the most peaceful system. But it would mean, if that is true, that fighting the state as being avoidable might be a mistake. It might indeed be unavoidable. Now, mind you, we won't know for sure until the end of time that the state is unavoidable. It might be that some new institutions will develop that will make the state avoidable. And if it's the case, well, that's very good. But let me tell you that none of us is going to be living at the time.
Okay, we've got just a few more.
Can I comment on this? There is an Israeli historian, I forget his name, who makes the very powerful case that the state is on the way out.
Van Cravel?
That's it, Van Cravel. He's written 5 or 6 books on this very thing. And the main thing I get out of it is right now there are people called terrorists, non-governmental terrorists, who are fighting governments, powerful governments like the U.S., and they're not losing. Like the Mujahideen in Afghanistan have been fighting the U.S. for 8 or 9 years, and they're still in the battle. I want to take up the sociobiological.
They're not fighting on behalf of anarchy, though. They're fighting to be a government themselves.
We're not talking about anarchy. We're talking about the nation state. And Van Creveld's point is that there are institutions that are not governments that are very, very powerful and that are even fighting governments, powerful governments, on even keel, and that would be one of Van Creveld's point. I want to take up on what Pierre said about sociobiology or evolutionary psychology, whatever they call it, and this idea of being hardwired. This is why it's so hard for us to promote libertarianism, because we're not hardwired for libertarianism, we're hardwired for socialism. Now, what is sociobiology? Sociobiology is the theory that we are the way we are now because of what it took to live 1 million years ago. For example, anyone here afraid of bathtubs? Nobody's afraid of bathtubs. Anyone here afraid of snakes? Everyone's afraid of snakes. Why is this? Well, there was no payoff 1 million years ago to be afraid of bathtubs. So we weren't hardwired to be afraid of bathtubs. There were no bathtubs. Whereas if you weren't afraid of a snake 1 million years ago, you didn't leave as many progeny as people who were afraid of snakes. When Indiana Jones protected his jewels, he didn't protect them with bathtubs. He protected them with snakes. Yet now bathtubs kill more people than snakes, far more people than snakes. So we are hardwired to be afraid of snakes. You show a snake to a little kid who's never seen a snake before and he goes like that. Whereas you show him a bathtub, he's not scared. We are hardwired to be socialists in the sense that we are hardwired to be...
Your wife must have bathed your kids. Your wife must have bathed your kids.
We never show them snakes. The point is, we are hardwired for explicit cooperation. If we saw somebody lying there in convulsions, we'd help them. But we're not hardwired for implicit cooperation. Implicit cooperation is cooperation through markets. When we had that Katrina business in New Orleans, prices of gasoline and milk and orange juice and things like that, diapers, went up through the roof. Now, if we're sophisticated in economics and we know about implicit cooperation, we know that that was a cry for help. That was a cry to bring more of those things into New Orleans because you can make more profits. But instead, they called that price gouging. There was even a case where people were online to get a gallon of water, which used to cost 50 cents, and they were selling it for 25 bucks. And somebody online had a cell phone and called the cops. All was online, which shows that he valued the water at more than $25, otherwise he wouldn't be online to buy it. He called the cops and said they were price gouging. The cops came and shut him down, and everyone online applauded.
Now they don't have water.
This is a contradiction in nature. Because they were so hardwired not to realize about the beneficial effects of prices. So it's for that reason that they're hardwired against libertarianism. That's why it's so hard for you guys to get elected, because they're not hardwired to appreciate markets, but they are hardwired to appreciate government giving them stuff. And they're also hardwired for the headman or somebody, the government, to tell them what to do. That's why it's like the rock of Sisyphus. We push it up and it comes down. We push it up and it comes down. Some of us are not hardwired that way. We're hardwired for libertarianism, where we've overcome our hardwiring the other way.
Or we're just crazy.
Or a little of both. That's why it's so hard, but it's such an important thing that we promote liberty over and above the hardwiredness of people. So I think that's why libertarianism is such a hard sell, and that's why I think that anarchism is such a hard sell, because we're hardwired against both anarchism and freedom.
Okay, we've got no time left. We've got 6 people on the list here. So let's do the same thing again. Let's do quick 30-second questions and 30-second answers. We can go 5 minutes late. We're 5 minutes. Next. So Phil, and then Miroslav, then John Clark, Lilia, Michael, and Dan Kincaid. So Phil first.
All right, quick question for Walter. You're a self-proclaimed anarchist, and I'm just having a question for myself. I'm a little foggy about the existence of the Libertarian Party in of itself, because I'm wondering, like, is participating in the very system that oppresses us, isn't that sending a mixed message to people?
I don't see it that way at all. I taught at public universities. I participated in the system that was oppressing us, and like Jan and like Pierre and like Paul, I try to promote liberty in the class. I'm sure all 4 of us did the best we could. I don't think there's any reason not to have a political party, because people every 4 years really pay attention to this stuff, and that gives us an opportunity to promote liberty that we wouldn't otherwise have. Now, I'm not against think tanks. I was in a think tank. I was in the Fraser Institute. I had problems with that, but the Mises Institute is doing wonderful work. What do you call it? The Free State Project. Everyone moves to New Hampshire. The seasteading of Patrick Friedman. There are lots of ways to do this, but I think the Libertarian Party is one way also.